In early 2017, the true crime documentary titled Abducted in Plain Sight was released and made available to Netflix and Amazon Prime subscribers. The documentary follows the real-life story of Jan Broberg. In 1974, 12-year-old Jan was abducted from her small town in Idaho by her neighbor and close family friend. The story gained significant attention when it took place. However, the case sparked the interest of viewers when the film was released. The documentary recounts the story of Jan's abduction, but also adds interviews with family members, law enforcement, media professionals, and even the victim herself. After watching the film, many audience members walked away completely baffled by the outrageous and controversial circumstances brought to light. As if the case wasn't messy enough, it turns out that the filmmakers actually left out some very shocking details that could increase the absurdity of the story. Number 5. Church. The Brobergs could be described as the typical all-American family. Bob and Marianne Broberg married and moved to a small town in a quaint community in Idaho. The couple had 3 little girls, and from the perspective of an outsider, had the perfect family. Just like any other perfect family, the Brobergs ate at a dinner table and went to church every Sunday. They were members of the Church of the Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. The Brobergs had a strong connection to their faith, and Marianne even spent most of her free time working with the church. Although there's nothing wrong with having a strong relationship with religion, it can be argued that the Brobergs' beliefs played a role in the most traumatic experience they could ever endure. The Brobergs met Robert Berchtold and his family while attending a church event. Allegedly, Robert approached them and initiated conversation. The two families immediately hit it off and agreed to meet for dinner. The unsuspecting Brobergs shook the hand of a man that would one day tear their family apart. Many would say that this event was caused by the church simply because that was the location. Of course, it was more of a situation of chance and everyone being in the wrong place at the wrong time, though. Clearly, blaming the church for this introduction is a bit of a stretch. However, the religion that was practiced in that church also significantly impacted the story that would soon boil over. A prominent element of the Brobergs' faith was forgiveness. The concept of forgiveness is discussed and taught frequently in the Latter-day Saints' beliefs. Considering that Brobergs held a tight, strong grasp around their faith, it's no surprise that they would uphold and practice the importance of forgiveness. In theory, this doesn't sound like a bad philosophy to live by, but sometimes people can take their commitment overboard. The concept of forgiveness ultimately led to the family welcoming Robert into their home and into their lives. On that same note, Bob and Marianne allowed Robert, as discussed in the documentary, to sleep in the same bed as their child, despite his confession of having sexual and romantic feelings toward children in the past. The Brobergs allowed this to happen because their faith told them to forgive and provide second chances. Again, this is more the fault of the parents, not their entire religion. The documentary only briefly discusses the family's church and religious beliefs. Number 4. Another family. Robert directed his focus to Jan Broberg for several years before ultimately abducting her. Many variables played a part in Robert's choice to kidnap Jan. Mostly, Robert became obsessed with Jan, specifically, which made her a special victim to him. However, before the case, he wasn't just devoted to one child. Robert actually made a previous attempt to grow close to another family in the neighborhood. In February of 2019, Kathy Clark spoke with the news outlet KTVB about her experience with Robert. Before anything shocking happened between Robert and Jan, he befriended the Clark family. During their time together, Robert turned his attention to Kathy, and on several occasions it made her very uncomfortable. The Clark family didn't let Robert in as easily as the Brobergs, so most of his attempts with Kathy failed. She recalled one incident where she was babysitting for the Berchtold family. Robert came home early while the young girl was looking after his children. When she tried to leave, Robert insisted that she stay put. He told her, "You don't need to go home, just stay." Kathy awkwardly obeyed and sat with Robert for over an hour. She didn't report anything inappropriate or traumatizing, and eventually Robert gave her permission to leave. Kathy's father, who was featured in the documentary, shared a story about the Berchtold family accompanying them on a skiing trip. During this small vacation, Mr. Clark noticed how Robert focused his attention on the young girls. After that, Mr. Clark kept a safe distance between his family and Robert. The film did cover some points of this detail, though it glossed over it fairly quickly. Furthermore, they didn't mention Kathy's claims because she didn't make them public until 2 years after the film's released. Still, this small detail highlights Robert's nature as a threat. Number 3. Grooming. Child grooming is a psychological concept in which an adult befriends a child for sexual abuse. The adult grows close to the child and establishes a trusting relationship, sometimes even manipulating them to believe in a manner that is more desirable to the adult. Jan Broberg was unfortunately a victim to Robert's grooming. This is discussed in the documentary, but with few important details. The film could suggest that the relationship between Robert and Jan was something that happened quickly over a short period of time, when in fact, Robert began his grooming process at least 2 years before the abduction. He began giving Jan special attention by inviting her to family events, taking countless photos of her when she was having fun, and generally focusing on her in any given situation. Robert would use his own children as an excuse to have Jan sleep over. During these sleepovers, he would drug her with allergy pills, which made her disoriented and drowsy. He would then assault her as she slept, and when she would confront him about his actions, he dismissed her claims as false memories from bad dreams. After successfully manipulating Bob and Marianne, Robert spent almost every night sleeping with Jan in her own bed over a 6-month period. On those nights, Robert would perform his usual sick acts, but additionally, he would use them to strengthen Jan's trust in him. As covered in the documentary, when Robert abducted Jan, he convinced her that they were beings from an alien planet. The aliens would visit them at night to inform them of their mission, which was to have intercourse with Jan so that they could have a baby to save the world. This concept seems so far-fetched for even a child to believe, but thanks to Robert's grooming, Jan accepted it as the truth without a doubt. This is because when Robert would spend those nights in Jan's bed, he would play a tape that he recorded of a fake alien voice, telling Jan the same lies. Eventually, the story was just a fact to Jan. Robert was very talented at grooming the young girl, unfortunately, and the film does cover some aspects of Robert's grooming, but leaves out details about how long and how thorough the process was. Number 2. Marianne. If you've seen the true crime documentary of this case, you know that both Jan's parents played a significant and even disturbing role in her abduction simply by being easy to manipulate. You may know some concerning details about Marianne, Jan's mother, based on the information provided in the documentary. For example, at one point in this drama-filled mess of a story, Marianne had an affair with Robert. However, you might not know the surprising detail that adds a new layer to the story. During an interview with Vanity Fair, showrunner Skye Borgman shared an interesting detail that unfortunately didn't make the final cut of the film. According to Borgman, Marianne shared with producers the fact that she had a plan to threaten and possibly even harm Robert. Marianne allegedly stated that she and her brother were discussing Robert when they began to plot against him. They created a plan to get Robert to meet them at an empty parking lot so that they could threaten him. Unfortunately, Marianne didn't specify how they planned to threaten him, or if they intended to do anything more than talk. Viewers debate that Marianne could have rescheduled the meeting with her brother to either attack or kill Robert. Considering her lack of details, that much can't be confirmed. The suspicious plan never played out though, and either she changed her mind or she failed to get Robert to agree to a meeting. It's also unclear of exactly when this discussion between Marianne and her brother took place. We can assume that it was after Jan's first abduction, but with how outrageous this story is, there's no telling. As mentioned, this portion of the interview didn't make it into the final cut of the film, which disappoints many viewers. Perhaps if this portion of the interview was seen as important by the producers, it would have had more specific details that could better evaluate Marianne and her role in the abduction. But then again, some argue that she only told this story to producers to make it seem like she hated Robert. Number 1. UFO Mania. The most important element of Jan's second kidnapping may seem completely ridiculous. When grooming her and after abducting her, Robert would play a tape that he recorded for Jan. Actually, Robert had many tapes like this, and they were all small segments of a much bigger story he was creating. The tapes featured an alien voice, likely a doctored version of Robert's voice, that informed Jan of a huge conspiracy that was somehow directly connected to her. According to the alien's explanation, Jan was from an alien planet that planned to attack Earth and kill the Broberg family, unless Jan did exactly what they said. They claimed that Robert, referred to as the male companion, was Jan's soulmate that was assigned to a mission to help save the world. The mission was to have intercourse with Robert and birth a baby. Jan, a young and naive girl filled with fear, believed what she was told by the tapes. She recalled feeling more terrified of the voice on the tapes than of Robert, and again, this concept seemed obviously ridiculous now, but considering the fact that she was just a teen and had been exposed to the tapes for over 2 years at this point, it kind of adds up. But if that isn't enough, consider the small detail that filmmakers left out of the documentary. Around 1970, a UFO frenzy began to spread across the country. For some reason, the number of reported UFO and alien sightings increased substantially and reached a historical peak that's even higher than today's. It's unclear what may have sparked this mania, but it certainly played a role in Jan's logic. Nearly every day on TV and the radio, several more cases were discussed. Considering that Jan had already been exposed to the concept of an alien attack, it was easy for her to believe the stories that she was hearing and use them to provide Robert's stories credibility. In Abducted in Plain Sight, the producers covered the details of the tapes but left out the real-life publicity being handed to the aliens. It's both interesting and sad to see how media can shape a young mind into believing such an insane story. This media coverage was partially responsible for Jan's abduction. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos. Also, if you enjoyed this narration, maybe consider checking out my personal channel at youtube.com/ty_knots.